you have Russian prisoners of war who were filmed while in captivity and subjected to really degrading treatment. And I wanted to show you the take of liberals on this. So Glenn Greenwald was posting their reactions. Basically, they were talking about how in this article from the Sydney Morning Herald, you know, it reads, Ukraine's videos of crying Russian prisoners could violate the Geneva Convention. Because that's what they were filming, the Russian soldiers just crying and basically posting that on the internet to embarrass them after they had been captured as prisoners of war. And then you have comments underneath. Look at these comments by liberals. They say, why worry about the fine print? There is a war and it has to stop by all means. Stop stirring fire like this. The world needs to unite. Yes, it is against the Geneva Conventions to publicly display POWs, but this is something else entirely, in my humble opinion. I don't usually share prisoner of war pictures, but this is extraordinary confession from a Russian soldier is important because it confirms absolutely that the line that Ukrainians are fascists was not only sold to by Glenn Greenwald and the Putinist left, but to most Russians. God, imagine how messed up in the head you have to be to say this kind of stuff. The Putinist left. Grow a ball sack and stop with your insults and try to answer arguments concretely. I just showed you a Ukrainian mayor, deputy mayor of Mariupol, who is praising the fucking Azov battalion, which are neo-Nazis. Does that mean every Ukrainian mayor is a neo-Nazi? No, but it exists. There's an issue here. And you're arming them, and you've been arming them before. This is the video, one of the videos.
Да, нам говорили, что якобы на территории Украины, ну это еще, как бы, когда мы в России находились, по средствам массовой информации, там говорилось в основном о том, что на территории Украины господствует, я сейчас дословно 100% ошибусь, поэтому не судите строго, что на территории Украины господствует фашистский режим, что националисты, нацисты захватили власть в свои руки, что обычным людям нужно помочь избавиться вот от этого, ну, условно говоря, ярма. Вот, то есть цель нам довели такую. Естественно, это была информация односторонняя, то есть у нас же есть интернет, там иногда пролетает, то есть из других источников.
So you get the idea. This is basically like a forced confession. You can't do this thing under the Geneva Convention, and liberals don't seem to mind at all, right? They think, oh, it's okay because we're doing it's our to our benefit, and it's Russian troops doing it. So whatever, we can treat the Russians however we like. Here's another one. They say, I understand Geneva Conventions, but this man seems sincere and honest. And if more people in Russia seeing this wake up from their zombified state, the better. You know, again, it's like, yeah, I understand Geneva Conventions. Like, it's some kind of afterthought and not... like, you know, okay, we'll get to that later. No, there's no we'll get to that later. This is a prisoner of war, and you must treat them according to the Geneva Convention. You know who had this kind of attitude violating the Geneva Convention? The Nazis, because the Nazis said, well, Russia didn't sign the Geneva Convention, so we don't have to treat them according to the rules therein, which is fake. It doesn't matter if you arrest, detain a prisoner of war from China or Bangladesh or Norway or Sweden, or it makes no difference whether their country signed the convention or not. If you signed it, you got to follow it. And of course, the Germans had signed it, but they treated the Soviets like subhuman. They exterminated them, they marched them to death and starved them, and that was their argument. And so you have people here, liberals, basically saying that it's okay to violate the Geneva Convention because it suits their narrative, and they think that it's okay to post videos of of forced confessions, humiliating, I don't care what you call it, that you can't do that. Here's some more of this stuff. Russian soldiers captured by Ukrainian armed forces, now prisoners of war.
Да, быстрее думай, внимание, ой, я не хочу резервы В случае, если вас прорывают, какие резервы туда потянут? Вы что, нам поставили, смотрите, ничего нам не... Старший кто это был? Позывные.
So again, that's you got many of these videos, right? Many of these videos here. And they're humiliating them. You can't do that. Look at Article 13 of the Geneva Convention regarding the treatment of prisoners of war. So they say prisoners of war must at all times be humanely treated. any unlawful act or omission by the detaining power, so in this case Ukraine, causing death or seriously endangering the health of a prisoner of war in its custody is prohibited and will be regarded as a serious breach of the present convention. In particular, no prisoner of war may be subjected to physical mutilation or to medical or scientific experiments of any kind, which are not justified by the medical, dental, or hospital treatment of the prisoner concerned and carried out in his interest. And likewise, prisoners of war must at all times be protected, particularly against acts of violence or intimidation, and against insults and public curiosity. And measures of reprisal against prisoners of war are prohibited. So again, basically, you can't take revenge on prisoners of war. And I mean, public humiliation is certainly one form of that. So you could certainly make a case there. This is from Amnesty International. So Amnesty International reported on this violation. They said that prisoners of war must be protected from public curiosity under Geneva Convention. Prisoners of war in the Russian invasion of Ukraine must have their rights respected under the Third Geneva Convention, Amnesty International said today. In recent days, the Ukrainian authorities have brought Russian prisoners of war to press conferences to discuss their roles in the military invasion. And videos on social media have also shown captured soldiers contacting family members in Russia. So I'm sure you've seen those videos too, where they were giving some guy tea and a phone, and he was like crying on the phone, crying while speaking, and they were filming this and posting it online. And they were using it as propaganda in the US, right? They're basically saying, look, this guy just wants to go home. Why can't all the other Russians see what's going on and just, stop fighting in Putin's war? This is propaganda. I don't care what the fuck you say. It's propaganda, and it's against the Geneva Convention. That's what it is. You're abusing the POW. You cannot do that. Whether they're Ukrainian, they're Russian, makes no difference. Videos of captured Ukrainian soldiers have also appeared on social media, though it is not yet clear if these have official sanction. As the conflict continues, it is essential that all parties to the conflict fully respect the rights of prisoners of war. Joanne Mariners, who is the director of Amnesty International's Crisis Response Program, said, any public appearances can put prisoners of war at risk when they are returned to their home country, and also prove problematic for their families whilst they are detained. Because they could say, in Russia, for example, this is just hypothetical, they could see a video of a Russian POW and say, see, he's telling them about this mission, he revealed classified details, or he's lying, and then, they can accuse him of being a traitor. And then the guy gets punished at home when he gets home eventually, or they punish his family. Do you understand? That's just one alternative. One consequence, one possible consequence. And so they continue, Article 13 of the Third Geneva Convention explicitly states that prisoners of war must be protected at all times, particularly from public curiosity. It is the duty of the detaining power to ensure these prisoners' rights are properly respected from the moment they are captured. Right? And I just read to you Article 13, and the authoritative commentary by the International Committee of the Red Cross specifies that, quote, any materials that enable individual prisoners to be identified must normally be regarded as subjecting them to public curiosity, and therefore may not be transmitted, published, or broadcast. So obviously that includes someone's face, right? Or their ID. So there you go. This is, there's several cases of this. I've just shown you a fraction, of what's going on. And here is something else I wanted to point out, because, we're going to criticize Ukraine. We should also criticize Russia, because what I thought of is Snake Island. You remember they said that there was this myth that came out that, these 13 soldiers on Snake Island, they died bravely after they told a Russian warship to go F itself. And it turns out to be a lie. This didn't happen. It was completely made up. The 13 guys were actually not 13. It was several dozen of them, and they were all perfectly in good health and alive. However, how do we know that? We know that because Russia, and they filmed the soldiers individually and got them to confess on the camera that they were obviously alive. So, I mean, yes, on the one hand, okay, it proved that Snake Island wasn't true, and it debunked the myth, but you still shouldn't do that. That's not okay. You're not allowed to do that. The Snake Island thing, it should have been debunked through official channels. Russia presenting that to whatever authority, we could say the UN or the Red Cross, just to assure that these guys are in safe hands, but not posting that on the internet. That's not okay. Even though I agree it's good that it's debunked, but it should have been done in another way. You shouldn't have done that, because that's a violation of the Geneva Convention. I'm sorry, we have to be fair. We have to be correct. We have to be honest, and that's what it is. I don't see under any circumstances how it was okay to film those guys from Snake Island, with these sorts of not forced confessions, whatever you want to call it. I don't think that was okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was a breach of the Geneva Convention as well. Although, to be fair, that was, from what I've seen, that was just one incident, and obviously with the Ukrainians, I mean, it's many incidents, and it's being also justified by liberals. Do you understand? So they go on Twitter, these liberals, and they encourage it. They think that it's okay. Here it gets even worse. They say, yeah, the Geneva Convention, whatever. So again, if we criticize the Ukrainians and the liberals who are making fun of Russian prisoners of war and weaponizing that, we also have to criticize Russia when they film prisoners of war. It's not okay. And I'm not, I already showed you before, because when I was talking about Snake Island, this is Snake Island. This is where they said that it took place. And of course, if you look up the story, you will see that they are alive and well. Thankfully, no one died, and filmed them also in the bus. So this is also not okay. This is also not okay. This is also a breach of the Geneva Convention. We have to be fair. We have to be balanced. That's how it is. Prisoners of war, they have rights. This is not something new. This is something that dates back already to the late 19th century and early 20th century with the Hague Convention, the Geneva Convention. And, when I was in high school, when I was 17, I actually did a presentation on how Allied prisoners of war were treated by the Axis. And I really learned a lot with that, because I saw how the percentage of how many were captured and how many were alive when the war ended. And the Chinese, millions of POWs, of Chinese POWs, were captured by the Japanese, and they killed 99% of them. Because, again, the Japanese saw them as inferior, racially inferior. They committed genocide against the Chinese. And then, of course, the Germans did the same thing to the Soviets. They saw them also as subhuman. They made up this rule that, Russia didn't sign the Geneva Convention, so we don't have to treat the Russian prisoners according to the Geneva Convention, which is false, because Germany was a party to it, so Germany has to respect it no matter no matter where the prisoner of war comes from. And they used that as a justification, along with the racial hatred, to wipe out the majority of the Russian prisoners of war that they captured. They put them on a low-calorie diet, and when I say low-calorie, I'm talking like you cannot survive. As a man, you need like 2,000 calories a day, right? Give or take. And they were giving these guys like 100 calories, something ridiculous. And it was Bakke, who was the food minister under the Nazis, who came up with this hunger plan. It was literally called the hunger plan. So they wanted to make sure that Soviets soldiers starved to death, and the Soviets starved to death, and the German soldiers were well fed. Again, at the expense of the Soviets. And they starved them to death, and they sent them on death marches, and just so many horrific things, And then the Japanese in the Pacific, they also used British prisoners of war, Australian prisoners of war, to build the Burma Railway. They literally used them as slave labor to build this railway, and they also experimented on them scientifically. With diseases and under Unit 731. And this is very interesting, because instead of prosecuting the Japanese like they did with the Germans, what the Americans did at the end of World War II is they pardoned these Japanese war criminals in exchange for that research. And you got to ask yourself, why the hell would you even want that research in the first place? And why would you pardon them for these like horrific experiments? I'm scared to even tell you what they are, because YouTube might flag the video. Like, really just the worst kind of stuff, like Mengele, Dr. Mengele level, like the Germans were doing. And this was personally financed by the Japanese emperor. So the Americans pardoned them in exchange for that research. Shocking, but it's true. And actually, I was watching on RT of all places the other day. They were talking to some of the victims of this stuff. It's horrible. In any case, just to give you some examples how the Japanese violated the Geneva Convention, the Germans violated the Geneva Convention, and being honest, if you looked at the Allies, I'm pretty sure you would find many violations of the Geneva Convention, albeit to a lesser degree. I don't think it's the same degree, but certainly they exist on all sides, every single side, the Canadian, British, American. If you You can find many of them. Even the Soviets also, they violated the Geneva Convention, but it was certainly way more violent and widespread on the Axis side. But in any case, sorry, I know I digress, but I think it's important to give you context that these rules are not new. They exist since a long time, and they have to be respected, and there's a reason that they're international treaties. And in this case, both Ukraine and Russia are violating the Geneva Convention by publicly filming prisoners like this or like this. This is not okay. That's the difference, though, is that liberals, these pro-NATO clowns, they think it's okay to film prisoners of war for propaganda purposes like this. And I think it's unacceptable no matter what. I don't think that's okay at all. But they always find ways to rationalize violating international law. Again, it's the same. We always see this logic. When the Americans or the British bomb a hospital or they bomb civilian infrastructure, it's a mistake. It's not a war crime. It's a mistake. And when they film prisoners of war, yeah, there is the Geneva Convention, but it's okay because we're doing it to the Russians. They always have a reason to violate international law, which they keep talking about all the time, but they never respect. And they always have a reason, a justification, a pretext for them to do it because they're exceptional. It's this whole mantra that the Russians mean, they don't mean well. The Russians are evil, the Chinese are evil, the Iranians are evil, the Syrians are evil, the Cubans are evil. And every single thing they do is on purpose. Every crime, every accident, there's no accidents. It's all on purpose. And when NATO kills civilians, it's always an accident. NATO always means well. NATO can never do any wrong. This is the hypocrisy, and this is what is so outrageous.